decided I was going to check out which political party was most appropriate for me, because I believe in change and I believe in the environment, protecting the environment, having a kind of society where everybody matters. So at the age of 14, I got my membership card in the NDP. And so I've been a member ever since. That was really a decision I made because I believe we have to have a better world, better country, and we have to protect our planet. And the NDP is the only party, to my mind, that embodies all of those things, that really pushes the fight. They're a group of fighters. They fight for what's right, and that's what I think attracted me to the party, and that I've never been disappointed. And I should note that was I joined when I was a student at Westminster Secondary School. So when I joined at 14, I grew up in New Westminster. So I was a student here in New West when I took my membership card.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the answer. So our next question, sort of a follow-up, is do you have any advice for young people and teenagers that would like to get involved with politics in their community?
Care. That would be the operative word, care, and make a difference. There are so many things going on now where the voices and the actions of youth can make a huge difference. And so if you want to get involved in politics, get involved in the community. Make a difference with the environment. Make a difference with the kind of social issues we're seeing. A lot of people that don't even have the wherewithal to put food on the table or keep a roof over their head. So just getting involved makes a huge difference. I never planned for a career in politics, but I've always been active trying to change things locally. And I think that's the most important thing for somebody ultimately. If they want to be a good public elected representative, they have to care about their community, they have to care about making a difference, and they have to show that to people. And if they show that to people, in my case, I've been honored with people of New Westminster-Burnaby now choosing me a number of times to be their Member of Parliament because they see that I care about the community and I'm trying to make a difference.
Okay, thank you. So why did you want to become an MP after you joined the NDP?
Well, it wasn't wanting to become an MP, it was wanting to make a difference. And I first ran when the provincial and federal governments shut down St. Mary's Hospital. St. Mary's Hospital was extremely important secondary hospital in New Westminster. We knew that we needed those hospital beds, and so when I decided to run, it was to raise the issue because we had a big community coalition of people pushing back against the hospital closure. And it was to raise the issue of when you cut back on funding centrally, when the federal government cuts back on funding, the provincial government makes a mean-spirited decision to close a hospital. That impacts everybody. And since then, of course, we've seen with the Royal Columbian Hospital numerous times patients having to be in the Tim Hortons donut shop because there simply haven't been enough beds. Now, the new provincial government's addressing that and expanding Royal Columbian, but for many years, we were short of hospital beds. So that's why I ran. Didn't expect to win. We knocked on tens of thousands of doors and talked to people about the cuts in healthcare. And this is what I mean when I talk to younger people in the community. You could make a difference, and then people seeing the closure of this hospital, enough people in New Westminster and Burnaby voted NDP so that I became the Member of Parliament. But it wasn't with the idea of being an MP. It was with the idea of stopping the hospital closure and maintaining healthcare funding. That's how you make a difference, I think, in the community. You care about the issue first, and you care about yourself second.
Okay, thanks for the answer. So our next question is, what do you do most of the time as an MP?
The big operative word is help people, and especially now with the pandemic, we've had thousands of people that have fallen through the cracks. So I've been pushing in Ottawa for more supports for people with disabilities, seniors, small businesses. A lot of them in Westminster and Burnaby and across the country are being forced to close. People are losing their jobs, and that's why I pushed along with the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, our neighbouring MP for Burnaby South, to put in place an emergency benefit for people who'd lost their jobs as well. And originally, the government really didn't seem inclined to providing those supports. And so by pushing on all of these issues, we've managed to put supports into the community. That's what I mean about basically my job is to help people. It's either helping people specifically when they have problems with the federal government, and that's what we do in our office here in downtown New Westminster. But it's also pushing for people in Ottawa so that the federal government actually invests in people. One final point, when the pandemic hit, federal government provided an unbelievable amount of money, $750 billion, to providing support to the banks, Canada's big banks that make billions of dollars of profits every year. But we've had to fight for benefits actually going to people and supports going to people. And that's my job, is to speak up for people in Westminster-Burnaby and make sure that they're not forgotten when the federal government wants to spend lots of money on very wealthy and powerful people and institutions.
What about being an MP do you enjoy the most?
Helping people, making a difference. When a person can walk away, and we know we've helped them, we've helped them so that they keep a roof over their head, that they've got benefits if they've lost their job, if they get their pension the way they're supposed to. Sometimes big companies will try to rip people off, and we get the company to agree to make payments that consumer actually should have gotten in the first place. All of those things, that's what I like best, is to be able to say at the end of the day, yes, we helped people today, we made a difference. That's the best part of the job.
So, what do you think is the most important issue of our time?
I'd have to say the climate emergency. I mean, we're living through a pandemic now, and we can't neglect that. We have to keep the pandemic front and center. But the reality is the planet is literally burning. And that's why we have to take action to transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. I am the sponsor in the Canadian Parliament of something called the Green New Deal, which is also supported in a whole bunch of other parliaments and legislatures around the world. What the Green New Deal would allow us to do is transition to clean energy and make sure that we're putting in place supports so that nobody is left behind, that we really put in place a strong social safety net so people get the supports that they should be getting from the government. And so the Green New Deal is a response to climate emergency. The climate emergency is not getting better, it's getting worse. We have to take action. And Mr. Trudeau is building a massive pipeline. It'll cost $20 billion. And if he builds that pipeline, there is no way that we'll be able to address the climate emergency. So on the one hand, trying to stop that pipeline, on the other hand, trying to transition to clean energy, all of those things mean that your future will be much better, because as you're probably aware, the massive economic costs of climate change is rising to $50 billion a year over the next couple of decades. The seas are rising. Whole countries will disappear. Cities will disappear unless we deal with the climate emergency and restore greenhouse gas emissions to a more stable level that doesn't provoke that massive rise in temperatures that we're seeing every summer, certainly with the massive forest fires. So we have to get a handle on this. Your future depends on it. And this is, I guess, my pitch to your readers is get involved. You can make a difference. We've got the Green New Deal here, and we've got volunteers from the community that are starting to get involved in the campaign to get the Green New Deal adopted. But we also have environmental organizations in here, in the city and in the region. And there's so many ways you can help to add your voice and make a difference, so that we deal with the climate emergency and establish a planet that is much more stable and a quality of life for everybody on the planet that will continue on for decades to come. That is the biggest challenge facing humanity.
So, what do you think is the most difficult part of your job as an MP?
Oh, that definitely the travel. With the time zone change and everything else, it's about 20 hours a week going back and forth from Ottawa. And it's with that and the workload, you have to really balance things off. So I'm not a big fan of being on an airplane twice a week, but I come home, at least prior to the pandemic, came home every weekend, because my home's here in Westminster. It's not back east in Ottawa. So we have the world's largest democracy, and to be an elected representative from 5,000 kilometers away from what is the workplace during the week when Parliament is sitting is something that I think a lot of folks who are Western or Northern MPs think is probably the part of the job they enjoy the least, and so it's part of the job. I don't enjoy it, but we make the best of it. But if there was some kind of way like Star Trek to get me to Ottawa without the 20-hour travel time back and forth each week, I'd certainly be delighted to have that happen.
How have parliamentary procedures been disrupted during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, paradoxically, there's less travel involved. So because of the pandemic, a lot of the work I'm doing is on Zoom, like this meeting today. We sit in Parliament. Only a few members of Parliament can actually be in the House of Commons because of social distancing rules. So most MPs actually participate from their home or from their constituency office. So that has been, I think, a major bonus in the sense that MPs, for example, me in the West, aren't spending 20 hours going back and forth each week. We're actually here to help our constituents. Folks in New Westminster and Burnaby are my bosses. So those constituents, I've got to be there to help them. And at the same time, I can do my work in Ottawa, vote, propose improvements to bills so that more people are helped, negotiate agreements so that more people are getting the supports they need through the pandemic, and I can do it all without leaving Westminster. So that's been a major change, and it's a welcome one. And we'll see once the pandemic is over whether that's something that continues or whether we're all then going back and forth again every week to and from BC to Ottawa.
I actually noticed when I watch Question Period as much as I can, and I noticed that you've asked a question on Zoom before.
Yes, I have. Yeah, and made statements. Last week, I made a number of speeches on Zoom, asked questions, made a member's statement congratulating the new president-elect Joe Biden and the new vice president-elect Kamala Harris, congratulating them. I was actually the first in the House of Commons to do that, but I did it from New Westminster, from our kitchen, and so it's a big help. It actually makes it easier to do the work that we're doing in the city by being here rather than spending a lot of that travel time every week. And I don't know whether people find it's better or not. I don't know what are your thoughts, Colin, on what you saw on Zoom. Did you find that just as interesting as watching the regular House of Commons where we're all in one place, or did you find it was missing something?
Well, I noticed sometimes there's technical difficulties.
Yeah.
And like the microphone doesn't work or something. It's also strange when somebody stands up in Parliament and answers or asks a question to somebody on Zoom.
Yeah.
But obviously with COVID and everything, it makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a benefit. There's very few members of Parliament that have caught COVID as a result, and that means they're not transmitting it back to people in their riding.
And that means the government can continue operating.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
Okay, so we just have 2 questions left if you have time. So our second last one is, how do you prepare for question period in Parliament?
So preparing for a question period mainly is just reviewing what you want to ask. And I try to take it from the standpoint of somebody in New Westminster who's a constituent who's asking the same question, because I don't think I think Parliament should be represented by folks. The House of Commons means it belongs to all of us, and so sometimes members of Parliament will want to ask questions at a level that I don't think is appropriate. I always take it back down to New Westminster and Burnaby and what my constituents, who are my bosses, are thinking. So I take that, and that's my preparation, is to think what is interesting or important about this issue that people want to hear the government answer a question about, and what are the facts that I need to get out. And it's only 35 seconds, so it's not a lot of time. You normally get about 5 sentences. So that's how I structure it, for a couple of points that bring the facts to the public, a couple of points of how the government may not have reacted or has reacted badly in terms of fixing that problem, and then the question, why won't they do this? Or to fix this situation, have they thought about this? And I think our questions generally are very, very good. I'm sometimes disappointed by the quality of the answers, because Parliament works best when there's give and take. And sometimes I find that the government is rigid about saying, well, no, it's because this suggestion comes from a party that's not our party, we're not going to entertain it. And that's not how we make progress. That's not how we make sure that everybody's provided for in this country. We're an extremely wealthy country with enormous levels of poverty and suffering. And I think the best way to build the kind of country where everybody matters, where nobody's left behind, is for governments to listen to the opposition parties, and that there's a dialogue back and forth to put forward the best possible supports to make sure everybody's taken care of.
And finally, what do you like to do in your free time?
Well, that's a great question. I don't have a lot of free time. My wife and I, we farm a little bit of land on Barnston Island in the Fraser River for the food bank. So we had a bumper crop, about a ton of cabbage and tomatoes and squash this year that we delivered to the various food banks in New Westminster and Burnaby. I played basketball in college at Douglas College and Dawson College in back east. The year we won the national championship, so I love to play basketball. I love to listen to music, and I do follow politics abroad, so not just in Canada, and of course was following the U.S. election very attentively. But in this kind of job, people need to be able to get a hold of you night and day, so there's not a lot of free time. It's fortunate that I really love the work that I do and being able to help people, because then you're not thinking so much of the hours. You're just thinking about what a privilege it is to be able to help people in the position of Member of Parliament.
Okay, thanks for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Thank you for the work you're doing. This is it's extremely important that younger people in Westminster and Burnaby, in British Columbia, in Canada, get involved. It's really your future. So the information that you send out helps people to make those decisions. We've got a youth council in New Westminster-Burnaby, and it's in fact that youth council that suggested to me to present the Green New Deal before the Canadian Parliament. So anybody wanting to get involved as a youth activist in the community, you can contact my office at 604-775-5707. That's 604-775-5707. We'd love to have you involved. And we're taking, we've got a great volunteer team of a couple of hundred people that work on a variety of issues to help support the community.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Julian. We reached out to a lot of politicians, actually, but only a couple actually responded.
Who was the other one?
We reached out to some other MPs around New Westminster-Burnaby, like in Coquitlam and in Vancouver. We also reached out to some MLAs and the mayors of a few cities. We heard back from the mayor of New Westminster.
Yeah, have you spoken with him yet?
Well, he actually answered some of our questions via email. So in the previous issue of the HPB, we added that interview. Okay,
great. Well, it's my pleasure, and keep in touch if you want to talk more.
Okay.
We'll send your office the link to the Bugle, the Hume Park Bugle, when it comes out.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great to talk to you both.
You too.
Take good care. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.